Unfortunately, a lot of leaders lead in a very reactive way instead of being proactive. So I wanted to make this video today to show you how to start leading proactive instead of reactive, to stop the whole firefighting and actually start leading. I'm Emily and I am with Transformative Leadership, and I am here to provide you all the leadership operational tips and support and just help you evolve and grow as a leader and as an organization. So the very first step I want to give you is, as leaders, understand that it is not, so if we're leading from this space of constant reactive, we're in like this survival mode, we're in like these chaos times. And then not only do you feel that as a leader, but your entire team starts to feel it. And then it just becomes like this reactive mess and you're constantly in chaos, and it just doesn't change unless you start to change different ways and different strategies. So step number one, to start changing and shifting the way that you lead. And so the number one I would say is, this probably gets overlooked a lot the most, is they never fix their current issues or get to the root cause of it. And so they're constantly fighting fires. So if you never get to the root cause of it, you don't fix the real issue. You're just putting band-aids on processes and systems and problems without actually understanding what the root cause is and how you can solve that so it never comes back again. So think about it. If you were to do something in your personal life, you don't want to keep repeating the same thing over and over and over and over. Same thing goes with in your role as a leader. You don't want to keep the same process. You want to be able to fix the root cause, get it solved, so you no longer have to deal with it. So this is the very first key step. And if you're thinking, oh my goodness, like we have so many issues to solve, I don't even know where to start at the place that it's taken the most time for you. Look at your top 3 to 5, select those and start getting to the root cause of it. Because if you don't get to the root cause of it and start knocking that out to where you can start to breathe as a leader and your team has a little bit of like room to be able to think more proactive instead of reactive, is not going to shift and change. And there's tons of tools you can use, like we use the root cause analysis, the gap analysis, and all those other tools with our clients. I'm happy to share those tools. Just feel free to comment below and I can share those tools with you. They're super easy to use. It takes accountability, it takes structure, it takes showing up. You have to be responsible as the leader. Unfortunately, no one can take that accountability and responsibility away from you unless, of course, you hire someone to help you through that process. But just understanding that as long as you stay in this cycle of reactiveness and not fixing the root cause, it's going to keep coming back. And in the automotive industry, that's one thing that it taught me very, very well, was getting to the root cause. It didn't matter what it was, how big or small it was. If it was under my line of production and it was an issue and it showed up multiple times, I was doing a root cause analysis. If it was top impact, I was really doing one until like it did not show up anymore. So understanding this mentality and being able to get this for you and your team is going to be really, really huge. So take the time to understand the root cause so you can stop this firefighting process. And it also will take some shifts from a leadership direction and start asking, is this really a firefighting process, or do we just need to take a deep breath in, step back, and not be so reactive? So keep that in mind, because if you are constantly in the culture of firefighting, it will take some culture shifts to help you get to where you're not firefighting anymore. And that kind of leads me to the other second point, is the culture shift. So shifting cultures is not something that is very quick. It just doesn't happen overnight, but it can be very simple. And one of the tools we have learned a lot with our clients is the core diagnostics tool. It basically can give you a snapshot of the entire team, the entire org, of where the alignments are at and where they're aligned and not aligned, and then where the frictions, the strengths are at, and it can literally do it within 5 minutes for your entire team. And you can run this tool as often as you want and get that snapshot to see who is all on the same page with what topics, down to different goals and strategies that you have in your company. So if that's something that you want, feel free to check the description. I'll put in the description below so you guys can check that out as well. But this culture shift is really going to be what drives you to go from being reactive to proactive. And it's really a mentality of, we no longer want to operate in this reactive state and where everything's on fire. And usually it happens Fridays around like 3 or 4 p.m. when everyone's trying to log off, right? Or everyone's trying to get out the door. So keep this in mind, that it does take a culture shift. And as leaders, we get to be the one that shifts the culture first. We are responsible for that. And so internally, we have to create this for ourselves first and understand what does that look like, and then let it trickle down to the team. There's tools, there's support out there that can help you get there. You don't have to do it alone. And if you highlight, well, I'm not really responsible for the culture. If you are a leader, you are responsible for the culture. And even though you may not have say so, but you can still take a stand, you can still drive how the culture is and what it is, especially for your team specifically. Number 3, to go from reactive to proactive, is having clear escalation paths. What do I mean by this? If you don't have a clear mapped out escalation path of, it gets escalated to here, then it gets escalated here, then it gets escalated here, then it gets escalated here. So for example, if you're entry level, maybe it goes to your manager, then it goes to this manager, then it goes to this engineer, or whatever that is, mapping those out. So then when the firefighting is like, everybody's getting contacted. Maybe not everybody needs to be contacted. So having a communication path, call it whatever you want, escalation, some people call it like a map or chart, whatever you want to call it, but have this mapped out and roll it out to the entire team. Like, when XYZ happens, here's who you contact, these people. And at what status do they contact you as the leader? And then you know your status as a leader, who you need to contact. What status does it need to get escalated to? When you have these escalation paths and you communicate this, then not everyone in your org is trying to figure out who to communicate, who's doing what. And if you are the one that's trying to solve this, you also have a clear direction of, where do I go? Who do I contact? What do I do? And this should be mandatory in all of your processes. Highly recommend. It doesn't take that long to sit down and figure it out. It's just also like, if you have in finance, if you think about the dollar amount, who approves what, right? So usually you have approval amount, then your boss may have approval amount, and then their boss may have approval amount, and then the CEO, like wherever it funnels to, this is the same concept, just broke down in a communication standpoint. So that way you understand who needs to get contact, and you're not constantly in this firefighting reactive. So being proactive, putting those systems in place. This is just one of the systems I highly recommend to put in place, and it's super easy to put in place. It literally can take you less than an hour to map it out, and then of course have meetings to make sure everyone's on the same plan and all alignment, and then you can roll it out to the team. It doesn't take that long. It just takes some intentionality to create it, right? The next one is clear roles and responsibilities. This is probably one of the most underutilized things that companies and organizations do. They don't really know what their employees do or what they are doing. And then everybody doesn't really know what everyone does. Yeah, you might have this role, but when it comes to being reactive, everyone's just kind of throwing stuff everywhere instead of knowing what person to go to. And this also will help you in the responsibility and the accountability actions on who is in charge with what and for what, right? What team takes care of this? What team does not take care of this? And this will help you really understand that you're going to the right person. And it's kind of like having an org chart, but more in-depth org chart of what they do on the roles and responsibilities. If you don't have this mapped out, I highly recommend have a goal. This is also part of succession planning. It's also part of career planning, all of the things. You have to know what the roles and responsibilities are. And we have documented this for clients. So if you need support in that, we're happy to have that conversation as well. The next one, this is kind of one of my last tips I'm going to give, is have a decision-making process that you don't always have to be involved in as the leader. Again, this goes back to when we're trying to lead more proactive, we have to have more time and more space so we can get out of that reactive mentality to really see proactively Where do I need to change? What do I need to shift? And if we're constantly in the day-to-day trying to make the decisions, do all the things, we're just in the chaos. So if we can't remove ourselves from the chaos as leaders, then we're going to stay in that. And part of this is teaching your team how to have a decision-making process. What decisions they make, what decisions you make, and then coaching them, teaching them, this is how you make the decisions. This is the data you look for. This is what you get. Example, and like the automotive, we always did the 5W2H process. That was kind of to collect the data, right? To understand what happened, where did it happen, and all that process. And then based off there, looking at what else I had to consider to make the decisions. So it's practicing this with your team, teaching them a decision-making process that actually is going to work, and then allowing them to execute that. And don't micromanage this as a leader. You have to teach them, allow them to make mistakes. If they do, they do. You have to be able to help them and support them through this, because they're not going to be perfect when you go to roll this stuff out. So just to recap, to go from leading reactive to proactive, fix your current issues, get to the root cause, understand that it takes a culture shift and a mindset shift. Like, this is huge. Have clear escalation paths and communication paths, have clear roles and responsibilities, and then have a decision-making process your team can understand and get behind. Because if they don't, you're constantly going to be in the rat race of trying to make all the decisions and still trying to lead and still see where the company is going or what direction you want it to go into. And that is not going to be helpful for you, because you're just going to stay in the cycle. So I hope this was helpful. Feel free to drop any comments, any topics or questions that you have in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.